The smell of sweat and desperation hung in the hot air of that September afternoon. There I was, standing on a makeshift wooden platform, my hands shaking as dozens of eyes examined me like I was an animal in a pen. At 13, my belly was already showing the first signs of the pregnancy that had completely changed my life. My own parents brought me to this terrible place, where families sold their daughters to the highest bidder. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this. The auctioneer, a fat man with yellowed teeth, shouted numbers to the crowd of men gathered in front of me. Every bid made my heart race faster. I knew that any one of those men could take me away to do horrible things. My mind was blank, trying to find a way to escape that impossible situation. $50! Someone from the crowd yelled. My stomach turned. It was less than what a good horse cost. 60, another man shot back, and they all laughed as if they were betting on a cockfight. I wanted to disappear, to hide somewhere no one could find me. But there I was, being sold like any other piece of merchandise. The sun was too strong for that time of year, and my simple dress stuck to my body. Drops of sweat ran down my face, mixing with the tears I was trying to hold back. I couldn't show any weakness. I had already learned that crying only made things worse. The men seemed to like it when they saw fear in our eyes. $70 for the girl, the auctioneer continued, banging his gavel on the old wooden table. She's young, strong, and already expecting a baby. She'll be a lot of help on the farm and even comes with a bonus. The laughter echoed through the place, making me feel even smaller than I already did. My baby moved in my belly, as if it was also scared of the whole situation. I tried to look for my parents in the crowd, but they were already gone. They had probably already taken the money and left, leaving me alone to face my fate. They said they had no choice, that the family was starving, and that I was just another mouth to feed. But I knew it was a lie. They were ashamed of me, of the pregnancy, of everything I represented. $80, shouted a short, dirty man who was looking at me in a way that gave me the chills. I knew that look. It was the same look the man who got me pregnant had on his face when he cornered me in the barn. My knees started to shake, and I had to hold on to the wooden post to keep from falling. The crowd was getting more restless. Some men started to approach the platform, wanting to examine me up close as if I were an animal. The auctioneer let them look at my teeth, my arms, even my belly. Every touch made me want to throw up, but I couldn't react. I knew it would be even worse if I tried to resist. $90, came another bid, this time from an older man who was chewing tobacco and spitting on the ground. He had dirty fingernails and a cruel smile on his face. I closed my eyes and tried to think of something good, but my mind could only imagine the horrors that awaited me. Suddenly, a different voice cut through the air. It was lower, more controlled than the others. $200. Silence fell over the place. It was much more money than anyone was expecting to hear. I opened my eyes and looked for where that voice had come from. At the back of the crowd, I saw a tall man wearing simple but clean clothes. He wasn't yelling or laughing like the others. His eyes were fixed on me, but not in the scary way I was used to. It was different. There was something in that look that I couldn't understand. $200? The auctioneer repeated, clearly surprised. Are you sure, friend? That's a lot of money for a pregnant girl. The man just nodded, without taking his eyes off me. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The other men started to complain, saying it wasn't fair, that they didn't have that much money. But the auctioneer was already excited at the prospect of earning much more than he expected. Does anyone bid more than 200? He yelled, looking at the crowd. No one answered. It was an absurd amount for those people. 250, the tall man said, raising the bid even higher. Now I was sure something was wrong. No one would pay that much money for me unless they had very bad plans. My fear grew even more, if that was even possible. The auctioneer banged his gavel 3 times. Sold! $250. My life had just been decided by a sum of money. I now belonged to that strange man who had bought me as if I were a sack of corn. The man approached the platform, and I could see him better. He was in his early 40s, had dark hair with a few gray strands and a well-trimmed beard. His clothes were simple, but of good quality. He didn't look like the other men at the auction. There was a deep sadness in his eyes that caught my attention. When he got close to me, I instinctively flinched. I was prepared for him to grab me, drag me away, or do any of the terrible things I imagined. But he didn't do any of that. Instead, he took off his hat and said quietly, "My name is Vincent. I'm not going to hurt you." His words caught me by surprise. No man had spoken to me that way since my pregnancy was discovered. I couldn't answer, just stared at him with a mix of fear and confusion. He held out his hand to help me down from the platform, but when he saw that I didn't move, he respectfully withdrew it. "Can you get down by yourself?" he asked, keeping a safe distance. I nodded and carefully climbed down from the platform, trying not to trip. My legs were wobbly from nerves. Vincent walked beside me, but he didn't try to touch or guide me. The auctioneer came over with a greedy smile on his face. "Here's your merchandise, sir. She's all yours now. You can do what you want with her." Vincent took a leather pouch from his pocket and slowly counted out the money. Every bill he handed over seemed to seal my fate even more. "Thank you for the transaction," Vincent said to the auctioneer, but his voice was cold and distant. He turned to me and said, "Let's get out of here." It wasn't an order, more like an invitation. I had no choice anyway, so I started walking beside him toward a wagon that was parked on the side of the road. The crowd began to disperse, and many men looked at me with envy, probably thinking about what Vincent intended to do with me. I was thinking about it too. Why would someone pay so much money for a 13-year-old pregnant girl? What were his plans for me? Vincent opened the wagon door and gestured for me to get in. "The seat is clean," he said. "It's going to be a long trip." I climbed into the wagon, trying not to show how scared I was. He closed the door and walked to the front to take the reins. As we moved away from that terrible place, I looked out the tiny window and saw the auctioneer counting his coins. My parents were nowhere to be seen. They had really abandoned me forever. The reality of the situation began to weigh on me like a stone in my chest. Vincent didn't say anything for the first few miles. I could only hear the sound of the wheels on the dirt road and the horses snorting. The silence was deafening, giving me too much time to think about all the horrible things that could happen to me. My imagination was creating worse and worse scenarios. After a while, Vincent spoke without turning around. "Are you hungry?" His question caught me off guard. I was hungry, yes, but I didn't know if I should answer. What if it was a trap? "There's water and bread up here if you want some," he continued. "You don't have to be afraid to ask." My throat was as dry as sand, and my stomach ached with hunger. I had barely eaten anything in 2 days. I'm thirsty," I managed to whisper. Vincent stopped the wagon in the shade of a large tree and brought me a canteen of fresh water and a piece of homemade bread. "Eat slowly," he said, handing me the food without trying to touch me. "We don't want you to get sick." I drank the water as if I hadn't had a drink in weeks. The bread was delicious, much better than anything I had eaten at home. Vincent went back to his seat, and we continued the journey. As we got farther and farther from the town, I realized we were heading to a very isolated region. There were no other houses, no other people, nothing but fields and more fields. If Vincent wanted to hurt me, no one would be able to hear me scream. That realization made my fear come back with full force. "Where are we going?" I asked, finally gathering the courage to speak. "To my farm," Vincent replied. "It's about 20 miles from here. It's a quiet place." Quiet for him, I thought. Isolated for me, with no one to help me if things went bad. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and red. It was beautiful, but I couldn't appreciate the beauty of the landscape. My mind was too busy trying to figure out Vincent's true intentions. He had bought me for a fortune. No one does that without very specific reasons. Finally, after what felt like hours, I saw a house on the horizon. It was bigger than I expected, made of solid wood with a porch in the front. There were stables, a barn, and what looked like a well-tended vegetable garden. The place didn't look sinister or scary like I had imagined. Vincent stopped the wagon in front of the house and got down to open my door. "We're here," he said, holding out his hand to help me down. This time, I took his help because my feet were numb from the long trip. He held me just long enough for me to step safely on the ground. The first thing I noticed was the silence. There was no noise from other people, just the sound of the wind in the trees and some animals in the stable. It was a kind of silence I had never experienced before. In town, there were always shouts, arguments, constant noise. Here it was different. It was almost peaceful. "This is your home now," Vincent said, walking toward the porch. "You can have the room upstairs. It has a good bed and a window that gets the morning sun." I followed him hesitantly, still expecting him to show his true intentions at any moment. The front door of the house opened with a soft creak, revealing an interior that completely surprised me. I expected to find a dark and threatening place, but what I saw was a clean and tidy room, with well-cared-for wooden furniture and clean curtains on the windows. It smelled of waxed wood and something that reminded me of fresh bread. Vincent took off his hat and hung it on a hook on the wall. "The kitchen is over there," he said, pointing to a door on the right. "There's enough food for a few weeks, and I usually go to town every Monday to buy groceries." He spoke naturally, as if he were explaining the routine to a normal visitor, not to a girl he had just bought at a human auction. I followed Vincent through the room, taking in every detail. There was a worn leather armchair near the fireplace, a few photographs on the walls, and books organized on a small shelf. The place looked like a normal family's home, not the den of someone with evil intentions. But I knew that appearances could be deceiving. "I'll show you your room," Vincent said, starting up a wooden staircase that creaked slightly under our feet. "There's a basin for you to wash up and some clean clothes I left there. They belong to my—" He stopped mid-sentence as if he had remembered something painful. "Anyway, they should fit you." The upstairs room was small but cozy. It had a bed with clean white sheets, a dark wood dresser, and a large window that overlooked the fields stretching as far as my eyes could see. On the bed, there was a light blue dress and a slip, both obviously belonging to a woman. My heart ached thinking about who had worn those clothes before me. "The bathroom is down the hall," Vincent continued, keeping a respectful distance as he spoke. "There's hot water if you want to take a bath. You just need to light the fire under the tank." He turned to leave but stopped at the door. "I'll fix something for you to eat. Come down when you're ready." I was left alone in the room, looking around and trying to process everything that was happening. This made no sense at all. Why did Vincent bring me to a normal house? Why was he being kind to me? Where was the catch? I walked to the window and looked out. There were no other houses in sight, just fields, a few trees, and what looked like a stream at the back of the property. I picked up the blue dress and examined it carefully. It was good quality, with small pearl buttons on the back, front, and a cut that would easily accommodate my belly. The fabric was soft and smelled of lavender, as if it had been stored carefully for a long time. Whoever owned that dress had been treated with care. The sound of pots and pans in the kitchen brought me back to reality. Vincent was making food, and my stomach growled, reminding me that I needed to eat for my baby. I decided to change my clothes quickly and go down to find out what the strange man who had paid a fortune for me really intended to do. When I came down the stairs, the smell of real food hit me like a wave. It had been so long since I had smelled something prepared with care that my eyes filled with tears. Vincent was in the kitchen, stirring something in a large pot on the wood-burning stove. He had taken off his jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing strong arms used to hard work. "Sit there at the table," he said without turning around. "It's almost ready." The kitchen table was simple but solid, with 4 chairs around it. I sat in one of them and watched Vincent cook. His movements were confident and practiced, as if he had been used to taking care of himself for a long time. He served a plate of beef stew with potatoes and carrots, along with a thick slice of homemade bread. The food was delicious, much better than anything I had eaten in the last few months at home. I ate slowly, savoring every bite and trying to understand why Vincent was treating me so well. "Do you know how to cook?" he asked, sitting in the chair across the table with his own plate. I shook my head no. At home, I had never been taught to cook properly. My mother always said I was useless in the kitchen and only got in the way. "I can teach you if you want," Vincent continued. "It's a useful skill to have." I finished eating in silence, still waiting for him to finally reveal his true plans for me. but Vincent just cleared the plates and started washing the dishes in the sink. "You must be tired," he said. "It's been a long day. You can go rest if you want. I'll be down here reading for a while." I went up to my room confused and suspicious. This couldn't be real. Vincent had to be planning something. Maybe he was waiting for me to let my guard down to then show his true colors. I lay down on the bed, fully dressed, ready to run if necessary, and listened to the sounds of the house. I heard Vincent washing dishes, then the sound of his thick footsteps in the living room, the rustle of pages being turned. After a few hours, I heard him come up the stairs, pass my door, and enter another room at the end of the hall. The door closed softly, and the house fell completely silent. I waited all night, but nothing happened. Vincent didn't try to open my door, didn't make any strange noises, nothing. As the sun began to rise, I finally managed to fall asleep from exhaustion, more confused than ever about what was happening. I woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs coming from the kitchen. The sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, and for a moment I forgot where I was. Then reality hit me like a punch to the gut. I was in the house of the man who had bought me like an animal. But for some reason, he was cooking me breakfast. I went downstairs hesitantly and found Vincent in the kitchen, already dressed for work in simple clothes and leather boots. He had prepared a plate for me and left it on the table. "Good morning," he said without making a big deal of it. "I hope you slept well." "Why are you doing this?" I finally asked, no longer able to hold back my curiosity and fear. "Why are you being nice to me? What do you want from me?" Vincent stopped what he was doing and turned to look at me. His eyes had the same deep sadness I had noticed at the auction. "I don't want anything from you," he replied simply. "I thought maybe you needed a safe place to have your baby. That's all." His answer took me completely by surprise. In my entire life, no one had ever done anything for me without expecting something in return. "But you paid a lot of money for me," I insisted. "No one does that just to be nice." Vincent took his hat from the hook on the wall and headed for the door. "I'm going to take care of the animals," he said. "Later, if you want, I can show you the property. There are some chickens that need their eggs collected." I was left alone in the kitchen, trying to understand this strange man. I ate the breakfast he had prepared: perfectly fried eggs, crispy bacon, and toast with homemade jam. Everything was delicious, prepared with a care and attention I had never received before. After eating, I walked around the house, exploring the rooms. In the living room, I examined the photographs on the wall more closely. One of them showed a younger Vincent next to a beautiful woman with blonde hair and a little girl in her arms. They were all smiling. They looked happy. The girl had the same kind eyes as Vincent. Another photograph showed the same family in front of this very house, but at a time when it looked newer. Vincent had his arms around the woman and the girl, and they all looked completely in love with each other. I began to understand the sadness I saw in his eyes a little better. When Vincent came back from the stable, he found me looking at the photographs. "My wife Sarah and my daughter Emma," he said softly, stopping beside me. "They died 2 years ago in a wagon accident. The horse got spooked by thunder and bolted. I couldn't save them." His voice was heavy with pain, and I finally began to understand why he had taken me from that auction. He knew what it was to lose family, what it was to feel completely alone in the world. Maybe he had seen something in me that reminded him of his own loss. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, not knowing what else to say. Vincent just nodded and carefully put the photographs back in their place. "They would love to know someone is living here again," he said. The house got very quiet after they were gone. That afternoon, Vincent showed me the property as he had promised. We walked through the fields where he grew corn and wheat, visited the stable where there were 3 horses and 2 cows, and stopped at the chicken coop where a dozen chickens pecked freely. He taught me how to collect the eggs without scaring the chickens, showing me each step with patience. "Chickens are like people," he explained as a red hen approached curiously. "If you treat them well, they respond. If you're cruel, they get aggressive and stop laying eggs." He picked up the red hen and petted it gently. "This one here is Rosie. She's the leader of the group." As we walked, Vincent told me about the farm, about how he and Sarah had bought the property when they got married, about the plans they had to expand the livestock and plant a larger garden. His voice became more animated when he talked about the past, but it always returned to that sadness when he remembered he was alone now. "You can help with the animals if you want," he said as we walked back to the house. "It's not hard work, and it might be good for you to have something to do while you wait for the baby to be born. But don't feel obligated. This is your home now. You can do what you want." That night, after dinner, Vincent offered me some books from the living room shelf. "Sarah loved to read," he said. "She always said a book was like a window to other worlds." I chose a book about plants and gardening, something that seemed useful to learn. Vincent smiled when he saw my choice. "Sarah planted this garden," he said, pointing out the window to the small garden at the back of the house. "She knew exactly when to plant everything, how to care for the plants when they got sick. I tried to keep it up after she was gone, but I don't have her touch for these things." I spent the evening reading about different types of plants, about when to plant and harvest, about how to prepare the soil. It was fascinating to discover that there was a whole science behind something I had always considered simple. Vincent sat in the armchair by the fireplace, reading his own book, and every now and then our eyes would meet as we turned the pages. In the days that followed, a routine began to form. Vincent would wake up early to take care of the animals, and I would help by collecting eggs and feeding the chickens. He taught me how to milk the cows, groom the horses, and tend to the garden. It was honest and rewarding work, very different from anything I had done before. "You have a knack for this," Vincent said one morning as I was feeding the horses. "They like you. Animals can feel when someone has a good heart." His words warmed me inside in a way I wasn't used to. No one had ever praised me for anything. As the weeks went by, my belly grew larger, and Vincent always worried if I was getting too tired or needed to rest. He bought fabric in town for me to make clothes for the baby, even though I didn't know how to sew very well. Patiently, he taught me basic stitches, sitting beside me in the living room on cold evenings. "Sarah was an excellent seamstress," he said one night as I struggled with a thread that wouldn't go through the needle's eye. "She made all of Emma's clothes, little dresses with ruffles, rompers with delicate embroidery. Emma was always dressed like a little doll." It was in those moments that I saw the deepest pain in Vincent. He spoke of his lost family with love, but always with that sadness that seemed to be a permanent part of him now. I began to understand that he hadn't brought me home just to help me. In a way, taking care of me was also helping him deal with his own pain. One afternoon, while I was watering the plants in the garden, Vincent approached with a serious expression on his face. "I need to ask you something," he said, taking off his hat and holding it nervously in his hands. "About the baby. Do you want me to call a doctor when the time comes? Or would you prefer a midwife from town?" The question caught me by surprise. I hadn't thought much about the birth itself, only about what it would be like to have a baby to care for. I don't know," I answered honestly. "I've never had a baby before. What do you think is best?" "There's a midwife in town, Dona Martha, who helped when Emma was born," Vincent said. "She's experienced and kind. I can ask her to come and check on you in a few weeks to make sure everything is okay." The genuine concern in his voice touched me deeply. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling tears well up in my eyes. "For everything. For getting me out of that place. For giving me a home. For taking care of me. I don't understand why you're doing this, but I'm so grateful." Vincent put his hat back on and gave a small but genuine smile. "Everyone deserves to have someone take care of them," he said simply. "Especially a child who is expecting another child." His words made me cry for real, not from sadness as I was used to, but from something I had never felt before. It was gratitude mixed with a kind of daughterly love I didn't know was possible. That night, for the first time since I arrived, I slept soundly without fear. I dreamed of my baby playing in the garden, with Vincent teaching my child how to care for the animals, with me learning to cook recipes that Sarah had left written in a notebook in the kitchen. For the first time in my life, I dreamed of a future that wasn't haunted by fear. When I woke up the next morning, I realized something had changed inside me. I was no longer just a scared girl who had been sold like merchandise. I was someone who had a home, someone who had a family, even if it was a small and untraditional one. I was someone who had hope. Winter came early that year, bringing with it icy winds that whistled through the cracks in the house and snow that covered the fields like an endless white blanket. My belly was huge now, making every movement a difficult and tiring task. Vincent had become even more attentive as the birth approached, constantly checking if I was comfortable, if I needed more wood for the fire, or if I wanted him to prepare a specific food. "The baby is moving a lot today," I commented one morning while we were having breakfast. My hand was resting on my belly, feeling the constant movements of my child. Vincent looked at me with an expression that mixed concern and something that looked like nostalgia. "Sarah used to say the same thing about Emma," he said softly. "In the last few weeks, Emma wouldn't stop moving. Sarah said she was excited to meet the world." He paused for a moment, lost in his memories. "Dona Martha said that active babies are usually healthy babies." Dona Martha had visited the farm 3 times in the last few weeks, checking my condition and preparing me for what was to come. She was a sturdy woman with gray hair and gentle hands that seemed to have helped hundreds of babies come into the world. She had taught me breathing exercises and explained what to expect during labor. "When the real pains start," she had told me on her last visit, "you'll know. It won't be like the little pains you've been feeling. It will be something that takes over your whole body. When that happens, have Vincent call me immediately." On that particular December afternoon, while I was trying to finish making a small blanket for the baby, I felt a different kind of pain shoot through my belly. It was more intense than anything I had felt before, a sensation that started in my back and spread to the front like a wave. I dropped the sewing on the floor and gripped the edge of the chair. "Vincent," I called, trying to keep my voice calm. He was in the kitchen making dinner and appeared immediately in the living room, still holding a wooden spoon in his hands. When he saw my expression, his eyes widened. "Is it the pains?" he asked, approaching quickly, but keeping a respectful distance as he always did. I nodded, breathing deeply as the pain passed. "I'm going to get Dona Martha right now," he said, already heading for the door. "Wait," I managed to say between breaths. "Maybe it's just a false alarm. Dona Martha said that can happen." Vincent stopped and looked at me with obvious concern on his face. "Are you sure? I'd rather go get her and not need her than wait too long," he said. Another pain hit me, this time stronger, and I moaned involuntarily. Vincent didn't wait for my answer. "I'm going to get her now. You stay here, try to stay calm. I'll be back as fast as I can." He grabbed his coat and ran outside, and a few minutes later, I heard the sound of the wagon moving away quickly. I was alone in the house, with only the sound of the wind outside and the crackling of the fire in the fireplace. The pains were coming more frequently now, each one more intense than the last. I tried to remember the breathing exercises Dona Martha had taught me. Breathe in deep, hold for a few seconds, let it out slowly. But it was hard to stay focused when each contraction felt like it was trying to split my body in two. I walked around the room, leaning on the furniture, trying to find a position that would ease the pain. Time passed strangely. Sometimes it felt like Vincent had been gone for hours. Other times it felt like only a few minutes had passed. The pains were getting closer together, and I started to feel an intense pressure in my lower belly. It was as if the baby was trying to push its way out. When I finally heard the sound of the wagon returning, I felt a huge sense of relief. Vincent ran in, followed closely by Dona Martha carrying a large leather bag. She took off her coat quickly and came straight to me. "How are you feeling, dear?" she asked, placing her hands on my belly to feel a contraction. "How far apart are the pains coming?" I tried to answer, but another pain hit me mid-sentence, making me double over. All right, Dona Martha said calmly. "Let's go up to your room. Vincent, boil plenty of water and bring some clean towels." She helped me up the stairs slowly, stopping whenever a contraction came to let me breathe. In my room, Dona Martha helped me change my clothes and lie down on the bed. She examined my condition with experienced hands and nodded in approval. "You're doing very well," she said. "The baby is in the right position and everything seems normal. Now it's just a matter of time and patience. Vincent brought the hot water and towels, but he stood at the bedroom door, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Can I help with anything?" he asked, avoiding looking directly at me. "You can stay close by," Donna Martha said. "Sometimes it helps to have someone familiar around during labor. You don't have to do anything, just be present." Vincent hesitated for a moment, then pulled the chair from the corner of the room and sat at a respectful distance from the bed. The hours that followed were the most intense of my life. The contractions came one after another, each stronger than the last. Donna Martha stayed by my side the whole time, encouraging me, helping me breathe, telling me I was doing well. Vincent remained in the chair, sometimes getting up to pace nervously, but always coming back. "Remember what we talked about being strong?" Vincent said during a pause between contractions. "You're the bravest person I know. If anyone can do this, it's you." His words gave me the strength to keep going when I thought I couldn't take any more. When dawn arrived, Donna Martha announced it was time. "The baby is ready to be born," she said, positioning herself at the foot of the bed. "With the next contractions, you're going to need to push. It will hurt, but it will be over soon, and you'll get to meet your child." What happened in the next few minutes was a mix of intense pain and a determination I didn't know I had. Donna Martha guided me, telling me when to push and when to rest. Vincent held my hand, giving me the strength I needed to continue. At one point, I felt like my body was being torn in two, but then I heard the most beautiful cry in the world. "It's a girl!" Donna Martha announced, holding up a small, pink, screaming human being. A beautiful, healthy girl. She quickly cleaned the baby and placed her on my chest. In that moment, all the pain disappeared as if it had never existed. I looked at my daughter's tiny face and felt a love I didn't know was possible. She had dark hair like mine, but her eyes, when she briefly opened them, were a light, deep blue. Her tiny hands were perfect, with minuscule fingers that closed around my finger when I touched them. "She's perfect," I whispered, barely able to speak through the tears streaming down my face. Vincent approached the bed, and when he saw the baby, his eyes also filled with tears. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice choked up. "Congratulations. You were amazing." Donna Martha kept working, taking care of me and checking that everything was okay with the baby. After a while, she announced that both I and the baby were healthy and that the birth had gone perfectly. "Have you thought of a name?" Vincent asked, still looking at the little one who was now sleeping on my chest. I had thought of several names during the months of pregnancy, but now, looking at her, only one seemed right. "Hope," I said. "I want to name her Hope." Vincent smiled, the first genuinely happy smile I had seen on his face since I met him. "Hope is a beautiful name," he said. "It means hope. It's perfect for her." Donna Martha finished her work and began to pack her things. "I'll be back tomorrow to check on you both," she said. "But everything went very well. You were very brave." She turned to Vincent. "You can be proud of her. She handled herself like a true warrior." After Donna Martha left, Vincent brought a tray with tea and a light soup for me. "You need to eat to get your strength back," Heathworth said, "and to produce milk for Hope." Hearing him say my daughter's name filled me with a happiness I had never experienced. While I ate, Vincent sat in the chair next to the bed, watching Hope sleep. "She looks like you," he said softly. "She has your determined chin and your small nose." He paused for a moment, then continued. "Sarah would be happy to know there's a child in this house again." "Vincent," I began, wanting to express all the gratitude I felt, but not knowing how. "I don't know how to thank you for everything, for saving me from that horrible place, for giving me a home, for taking care of me all these months. You didn't have to do any of this." Vincent looked at me with that gentle expression I had learned to associate with safety and protection. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Doing the right thing doesn't deserve thanks. It's just what any decent person would do." "But it wasn't just any person," I insisted. "It was you, and now Hope and I have a real family." The words came out before I could think about them, but when I said them, I realized they were true. Vincent had become more than just someone who protected me. He had become the father I never had. "Family," Vincent repeated, as if testing the word. "Yes, I guess we are a family now, a very small and a bit strange family, but a family nonetheless. He got up from the chair and adjusted the blanket around me and Hope. "You should rest now," he said. "It was a long night, and you need to get your strength back. I'll be nearby in case you need anything." He moved to the armchair in the corner of the room, where he could hear me if I needed help during the night. I closed my eyes with Hope still on my chest, feeling her small body rise and fall with each breath. For the first time in my life, I felt completely safe. It wasn't just because I was in a comfortable house or because I had enough food. It was because I knew, with absolute certainty, that Vincent would never let anything bad happen to me or my daughter. In the weeks that followed, Vincent transformed into the most devoted grandfather any child could have. He built a small, polished wooden crib, with hand-carved details showing little flowers and birds. He would wake up during the night when Hope cried, bringing warm water for me to wash with or helping to change her diapers. "You have a way with babies," I commented one morning, as I watched him rock Hope to stop her crying. His large, calloused hands seemed impossibly gentle as they held my tiny daughter. "I took care of Emma when she was a baby," he said, with that nostalgic tone that always accompanied mentions of his lost family. "Sarah used to say I had more patience than she did for waking up in the middle of the night." Hope had stopped crying and was now looking at him curiously, as if trying to memorize his face. One afternoon, when Hope was sleeping in her crib and I was in the kitchen helping Vincent prepare dinner, he stopped what he was doing and turned to me. "I need to ask you something," he said, with a serious look on his face. "What is it?" I asked, suddenly worried that something was wrong. "About the future," he said, choosing his words carefully. "About what you want for yourself and for Hope. You will always have a place here, that's not in question. But as she grows up, you might want your own life, maybe get married, have your own family." The idea took me completely by surprise. I hadn't thought about any of those possibilities. "I don't want to leave," I said quickly. "This place is my home. You're like a father to me. I don't want to be anywhere else." Vincent smiled, and I could see the relief in his eyes. "I'm happy to hear that," he said, "because I don't want you to leave either. This house was too empty without a family. Now it's a real home again." That night, after dinner, we sat in the living room, as we had done so many times before. Vincent read a book by the fireplace while I breastfed Hope. The fire crackled softly, and outside the winter wind blew through the trees. It was a scene of domestic peace I could never have imagined a few months earlier. "Vincent," I said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I want Hope to call you Grandpa when she grows up, if you want, of course." Vincent looked up from his book and looked at me with surprise. "Are you sure?" he asked. "It's a big responsibility to be someone's grandfather." I nodded with certainty. "You're already like a grandfather to her," I said. "And more than that, you're the only family she'll know, besides me. I want her to know she has someone who loves her unconditionally." Vincent closed his book and stared at the fire for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "It would be an honor," he said. "Sarah always said she wanted to be a grandmother one day. In a way, I think she would be happy knowing I'm taking care of a granddaughter, even if not by blood." It was in that moment that I fully realized how our strange little family had formed. 3 people who had lost everything. Vincent, his family, me, my parents, and my innocence. Hope, a father. We had found each other and created something new and beautiful. It wasn't the traditional family any of us would have chosen, but it was ours, and it was perfect just the way it was. I looked at Hope, who had fallen asleep in my arms, and then at Vincent, who had gone back to reading, but with a small smile on his face. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that it had all been worth it. All the suffering, all the fear, all the pain, it had all led me here, to this warm and cozy room, to this good man who had saved me when I needed it most. "Thank you," I whispered, so quietly that Vincent almost didn't hear. "For everything. For giving us a chance to be a family." Vincent looked at me in hope, and his smile widened. "Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this." "Thank you," he replied, "for giving me a reason to keep going, for filling this house with life again." And in that moment, with the fire crackling, my daughter sleeping safely in my arms, and the kindest man I had ever met reading peacefully beside us, I knew that I was finally home.